Now that we have all the preliminary information down and our foundation set, we can finally begin with our verse magic. Let's get writing. Welcome to the third and final installment in this three-part series where I dive in step by step on how I would create a poem, or in this case, a song. And stay tuned for an additional episode where I'll actually give you guys a listen to everything put together. I'll sing the song, which you're gonna have to excuse my horrible singing in advance. And I'm going to put it together with all the chords, and you're going to be able to listen to the final product, all of our hard work together, actually realized into an auditory form. And so, let's begin. I must admit that I've been fiddling around a lot with my guitar recently, trying to come up with chords that work well together. Now, I'm not experienced in music theory or anything like that, so a lot of it was just about the feel. If certain chords worked well together or if they sounded discordant, anything along those lines. It was really just a trial and error sort of deal, which is kind of the refrain of this whole entire series, where everything is trial and error. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to try things and find out that it doesn't work, because that's part of the journey. That's part of the process. But admittedly, I've been doing a lot of trial and error trying to come up with these chords, and I think I've finally landed on something that sounds, in my opinion, pretty great. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a listen really quickly. Now, I'm super happy with how that melody turned out. I think it's just simplistic enough where we're going to be able to make lyrics around it, but at the same time complex enough where it really is impressive and adds to that beauty. I think listening to it by itself would be enough. I mean, I think it sounds great by itself, and it tells a story when in isolation, but I think when coupled with our lyrics, I think it's going to just have the synergistic effect. But I would like to first break down the chord progression, not really that in depth, but I want to really underscore in this episode that there's more than just lyrics to a song or a poem. Really, there's so much going on behind the scenes, so many other outlets for your message to spew out, to actually reach the audience. And so I would like to talk about the C major chord, because this is what actually, funnily enough, is called the home chord. And so pretty much the whole entire song is built around this singular home chord. There's my little house there for on the podcast. And essentially everything about the song, all the verse, all the chorus, all the pre-chorus, it's all centered around this home chord. And what makes this song so special in my eyes is really that bridge. I mean, it's the best part of the song for me. It melts from the major to the minor, and it has this kind of Beatles vibe, which I'm a really big fan of the Beatles, so I really like how that sounds. But in essence, it takes you away from the home chord. It's unfamiliar territory. It's a new grounds, a new frontier that we are uncertain of how it's going to end, of where it's going to lead us. And just like the message that we're trying to portray here about going away from home and coming to this new environment, the ultimate conclusion is that the chords find their way back home, but in a way that is completely unique and unexpected. You reach there and almost serendipitously, you only find out that that's the home chord when we return back to the verse. At least that's the way it was in my case. And that's part of the magic. It's home, but a new home. It's changed slightly. It's unrecognizable at first, but in due time you realize that there's this continuity where although the people and the faces have changed, you still have that community of people who care about you and that you can lean back on. And so that's just a prime example of how there's more than just lyrics to any work that you do, any poem that you write. There's always that rhythm in the background that dictates your message. And for any song, of course, you have the melody. It's inextricable from what it means to be a bard. But that's just me rambling. Let's actually get down to writing these lyrics. And so, as I've mentioned, I really found that the lyrics have to be based around the chords. There's no other way to do it, at least in my experience and the way that my brain works. I want to have some preconceived melody that I can just superimpose these lyrics on to synergize with the already present message. And so I've gone ahead and brainstormed a little bit here and there, and I've kind of come up with a pattern that I want my lyrics to follow. And this is what differentiates songwriting from poetry writing, where there's no set meter, there's really just a rhythm and a feel to it that you have to embody. And fret not, it's not something esoteric or anything like that. It's something that's literally ingrained into our bones, into our very heartbeat. We have that sense of rhythm already within us, and you just have to tap into it. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with our first line, and this is gonna set it's gonna set the tone for the rest of the verse at least, and even it's going to influence the way that we write the pre-chorus and the chorus and the bridge as well. And so I started with this idea in mind where Dad's been waiting about all our old bins. So it's Dad's been waiting about all our old bins. And so you see that there's kind of that rhythm to it. It's Dad's been, old bins, right? You also have that internal rhyme, which I'm just going to underline here for the viewers on the YouTube series so you can visually see my thought process. So first, really, it's broken up into two sections, each line is. We have this first part where it's 2 syllables, so Dad's been, and it's separated by a comma. And so this really is just to set up who the subject is, and in this case, it's Dad. And then we go on to the second part, which is really where the money is made. And so we have waiting about all our old bins. And so that just rolls off the tongue. It really fits well with the rhythm and the chord progression of the actual guitar. But something I would like to underscore here is the word choice of waiting. And now obviously you have the double entendre of waiting, as in standing at a certain point and letting time pass in order for an expected moment to occur, or something like that. But at the same time, it's wading, meaning swimming or trying to, or kind of drudging through this swamp or this quagmire, something along those lines. And so I like the idea of waiting, and this really set the tone for the rest of the lyrics, because I immediately latched on to this motif of water, because it honestly felt like to me like I was going on to the open seas for the first time, and I was at risk of drowning by myself. I'm without my crew, without my former captain. I've become my own captain, and that's entirely terrifying, going out into the raging and seething sea without anything to graft onto. It's terrifying. And so I really kept with this motif of water and deluge and struggling and drowning. And I think overall it really plays into the 3 different types of reading poetry. Now this, you can just ignore this whole next section, honestly, and you wouldn't lose a lot. But for the true poetry nerds, there are 3 types of ways to read a poem. First is the literal meaning, what is literally on the page. The second is the metaphorical, something that's a little bit deeper. And of course, here it would be moving away and that sense of loneliness and being untethered from that previous secure base. But there's a third layer, and probably the most elusive layer of the 3, and that's the metapoetic. That's essentially what the poet is either intentionally or subconsciously commenting on about the poetic process. And so, as you'll see as we go through this, you can read it as a double meaning in the sense that I'm talking about the poetic process as a whole, to the extent that you're going into this unknown territory, this amorphous sea. You're plucking out different words and different ideas and trying to merge it all together. And a lot of the times, the waves are going to rock the boat. You're not going to know if you're going to make it, but I assure you at the end, when you see shore, you're going to make it there. And it's going to be great. It's going to be so rewarding that you're going to look back on the seas that you just traveled by yourself, and you're going to smile. It's something that is really just one of a kind. I'm having a hard time explaining it to you because it's something that is kind of ineffable. But I digress. Let's get back into the lyric writing, because this is going to be a longer episode already. So Dad's been waiting about all our old bins. And so I'm seeing him in the garage, maybe trying to collect all of my old toys and my old memories in the form of pictures and bicycles and skateboards and whatnot. And I almost see my dad getting kind of wistful and missing those days, missing those relics of my childhood. And I see him kind of looking back and wondering how I got this big. And, well, I guess I can just make that the next line. I mean, the thing about this is it ends on big, which isn't a genuine rhyme with bins. I mean, big and bins, although they sound kind of similar, they start with the same consonant B, and they have that B sound. It's not exact, but that's all right, because in a song, unlike a poem, you aren't really going to be paying that much attention to that rhyme. As long as it sounds somewhat familiar, people are going to trick their minds in falling into this pattern, and they're not going to notice that it isn't a legitimate rhyme. And even if it isn't a legitimate rhyme, in this case, it really makes sense, because this moment in my dad's life and my parents' life and even my life, it doesn't have to rhyme. It's all about moving away, about breaking away from this rhyme scheme, about becoming independent and whatnot. So it really makes sense that big doesn't rhyme with bins, because it's taking its new path. And so here, wondering how I got this big. So this is 10 syllables. The first one, Dad's been waiting about our old bins. And the second line is wondering how I got this big. And so that's going to be 8 syllables. So now we got that. And honestly, the way that I'm coming up with the number of syllables that we need for the song, it's based off of the tempo that I play the chords at. If I were to cram any more syllables or any less syllables here, it wouldn't fit with the chords. And that's why I admitted that I had to first find the chords before I could start looking for the lyrics, because the chords are what dictates the lyrics, not the other way around. So now that we got that, let's move on to our third line. And so I'm thinking, since it's a song, let's do something like my dad thinking about all of our past gigs together, about our past songs, our past jam sessions together, where we would play guitar with one another, because my dad also used to play guitar, and there were times where we would just fiddle around on the guitar with each other, and it was nice, it was enjoyable, and it's once again that continuity between generations and environments, and that's one of the major themes, is that it may be changed a little bit, but some things remain kind of the same. There's still that same essence behind it. So let's go ahead and write something like rehearsing all of our past gigs. And now you see, once again, gigs kind of rhymes with big, kind of rhymes with bins. Not exact, but that doesn't matter, because they're not really going to pay that much attention to it. And even if they do, it ties in with that idea of separation, of becoming individual. And so let's go ahead and count the syllables, because the syllables have to match that first line here in order to have that rhythm. It's 10, 8, 10, 8. I'm pretty sure is what we're going to end up with. So let's count them. So rehearsing, that's 3. All of, that's 5 in total. 6, 7, 8. So actually, I stand corrected. So this is going to be 8 syllables. And it still works, because it has that continuity with the second line, and it fits with the chorus, or not the chorus, the chords extremely well. And so now that we have that, I want to go talk about Mom. And I want to talk about Mom. I see her in the living room. Dad's in the garage, of course, and he's thinking about all of our past gigs. Maybe he picked up an old guitar that we had, and he's reminiscing about that. But I see Mom on the couch or something, and she's found one of her old booklets, one of our old photo albums, and she's leafing through it and kind of tearing up about her baby boy, who's all grown up now. And so I want to say something along the lines, Mom is reminiscing about her baby boy, So I'm just going to go ahead and write that. So, and mom is reminiscing about her baby boy. And I see this going up, like, in terms of pitch, like, mom is reminiscing, baby boy. Something like that. Once again, horrible singing. But I'm thinking something like that. So let's go ahead and count the number of syllables. So it's 1, 2, 3. Reminiscing is 3, so we're at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so that is 10. That is 10 syllables. But something that I'm worrying is that it needs to be that 8 syllable. You know, that 8 syllable mold that we already set for ourselves. Because the reason why the first line works is because it's the intro. And in the intro, I gave myself a little bit more time and a little bit more flexibility to have an extra 2 syllables. And on top of that, in the first line, those words really make it easy to speed up singing it, you know, about all of our old bins. That's like, you pretty much slur all of those words together, and it makes sense. But in terms of this last line, I would really like to emphasize baby boy a lot, because it's the alliteration with baby boy, and it has that reminiscence and that sentimental quality to it that moms are only capable of. And so I'm actually going to get rid of about her, and I'm just going to keep it like this. And mom is reminiscing baby boy. And let's go ahead and count the syllables here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. Actually, I believe it's 9, because in mom is reminiscing baby boy. Oh, I stand corrected. It's actually 10, because baby is 2 syllables. That's apologies for that. And so yeah, it does make sense. Perfect. This really adds to the continuity with the first line, and it really stands as like the capstone for this verse. So now I think we got our first verse done. We're going to be leading into our second verse, and that's going to be talking about mom. We already talked about dad. We have our transition into mom, and now we're going to be talking all about mom's reaction to her baby boy leaving home. So let's go ahead and draw a line here. So this is verse 1. And let's get started. So I'm really seeing, as I mentioned before, mom sitting and leafing about all our booklets, all of our baby books, all of our photo albums and whatnot. And so I really want to keep this same little 2-syllable introduction. So I'm going to say mom, or she sits rather, because we already mentioned mom. We know who the she is. And it adds that continuity between the verses. So this is verse 2. So she sits, and as I said, she's leafing throughout all our booklets. And yeah, that seems to be 10 syllables. So we're in business there. And once again, you have that internal rhyme, right? You have sits and booklets. And so that's perfect. And that's really just going to make it that sing-songy quality. And so now that we have that, all of our booklets, then I thought, well, I really want to talk about, I want to go back to that water motif, that drowning motif, and I want to talk about mom crying and making this booklet all puddled and soggy with her tears, although that's kind of a grotesque image. I want to talk about her tears kind of leaking from her eyes and dropping onto the pages, and kind of smearing the ink in the process. So I'm going to be saying something like puddles throughout. I really like that word puddles. I don't know why. I think it just fits perfectly here. Like rain makes puddles. But puddles are also something that's kind of, it has a good connotation, a childish connotation behind it. So I think it fits perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and underline that with our blue there for the listeners on the podcast. And so puddles throughout from her blue. Now I gotta find something that rhymes with booklets. From her blue. Let's go with blue fits. I think that fits. So yeah, blue fits rhymes with sits and booklets. And yeah, I think wording it blue fits. It's more than just crying. It's this paroxysm. It's something that overcomes her. She can't control it. And yeah, I think I like how that sounds. So blue fits, once again, tying with this motif of water. And I also think that leafing, I forgot to mention this, leafing, I think is also a really unique word here because it ties in with the idea of spring and turning a new page, turning a new leaf in this chapter of my life. But it also obviously is a play on words because leafing is very similar to leaving. And in the way that I pronounce it, at least, I have a tendency to mumble a little bit when I pronounce. So it's going to sound a little bit like leaving. And so it has that little subtle connotation. And so then puddles throughout from her blue fits. Let's go ahead and count the syllables. So puddles throughout from her blue fits. That is 8 syllables. Perfect. And I want to keep on driving home this water motif. And so I want to say this is one of my favorite double entendres. The current was more than, let's go ahead because it needs to rhyme with fits. So I'm thinking admits. So more than I'd admit. I'm pretty sure that works in terms of syllables. So the current obviously ties in with that, but it also is tying in with the idea of time and how we're automatically drawing this connection between the water motif and the passage of time and its fluidity, which obviously is something that you could dive into in and of itself. But in terms of this constant stream of time, it really drives home that idea that, once again, there's always going to be that continuity of the stream, that the faces are going to change, but a lot is going to remain the same, no matter where you're at on the road. And so now we gotta cap it off with the final line of this verse, and I'm thinking something like, but I'm just swimming. Because obviously ties in with the current. I'm swimming with the current. I'm swimming towards the current, rather, when my parents are trying to reach back to the past. So I'm kind of going against their grain, but I'm going with the passage of time. So I'm just swimming. I'm just minding my own business. And I'm just trying to move on. So I'm just swimming forwards. And I want to do a little internal rhyme here because I think it would just flow extremely well. So I'm just swimming forwards, towards, towards the door. So there it is. There's our first 2 verses done. Now we're going to go on to our pre-chorus. Now our pre-chorus and our chorus is going to stay the same throughout the song. And I did that for two reasons. One, it's just extremely practical for me. For a video or a podcast episode like this, it's already going to be super long. I mean, it's already 31 minutes, and so I want to keep this nice and concise, and so I'm just going to repeat that. But at the same time, I think it sounds extremely good for the song, and at the same time, I think once again it ties with our theme, that although the verses are going to change, there's still going to be that continuity that you can always tap into, and you can always hear if you listen closely enough to this deeper song, this deeper continuity. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a second page here, and we're going to talk about the pre-chorus. Now the pre-chorus is going to be shorter in terms of the number of syllables, but it's going to be snappy. So I want to draw from the door. I want to rhyme with the door for the pre-chorus, and that's just to make sure that all these segments flow nicely together. It's something that I did before with the mom and tying it in with the she sits. I'm still talking about mom. That's a sophisticated transition, something I would suggest to all of you guys in order to make it seem like one comprehensive work and not just a bunch of small little segments. And so, but I'm just swimming forwards towards the door. So I'm thinking it's a chore. And I guess the idea of chore really ties in with that parents and that familial relationship. But it also it really underscores that monotony, or that annoying aspect of moving out and growing up. It takes a lot of effort, and sometimes it does feel like a chore that you're gonna just have to put up with. So it's a chore. Moving out. And once again, I want to do some internal rhyme here, because that's my thing. So moving out. I'm rooting out. A little bit of country twang. I'm rooting out all my drawers. And so the drawers obviously ties in with chore. And so that's the rhyme. And yeah, you have that internal rhyme, moving out, I'm rooting out all my drawers. And so how many syllables is that? So moving out, I'm rooting out all my drawers. That's 10 syllables, yeah. So that will fit perfectly with our song, because that's kind of the base in terms of meter. 10 syllables, give or take, is what we've been working with, 10 or 8. But 10 is kind of the beginning and the end of each section. And so moving out, I'm rooting out all my drawers. Yes, I ashore. Once again, ashore, tying in with drawers. And I've gone ahead and add a little bit of anacrusis here, which is just fancy jargon for an extra syllable at the beginning. So anacrusis. And it's something you hear all the time. I mean, you have people saying like, come on now, and stuff like that all the time. And especially in songs, you can hear it all the time in the background. And so I'm going to add that a little bit, and that's just to fill that empty space and add a little bit of syncopated syllables in between the different lines. It makes it flow a lot better. So yes, I ashore, mom and dad. I'm gonna, because I think that just flows better. Instead of I'm going, I'm gonna make it, let's see, how many syllables is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Make it to the shore. Mom and Dad, I'm gonna make it to the shore. So let's go ahead and count the syllables. Mom and Dad, I'm gonna make it to the shore. Now, that's 11 syllables, which you would think that does not work. We have to scrap it. We have to cut out a syllable. But really, it does work. And this is part of the paradox of songwriting. What's on paper is so much different than how it actually sounds when you sing it and in vivo. Because when I'm gonna sing it, what I think I'm gonna do here is just really speed up I'm gonna make it. That really condenses it down into just a couple syllables, whereas before it was something like 5 syllables. So that would cut it down to 4, and it would make it all work together. And so once again, I'm gonna make it to the shore. Shore ties in with the water motif, and I forgot to mention this as well. The rootin ties in with that spring motif, with that the leaves. I'm leafing through all the booklets, and so those go hand in hand with each other. I would really suggest whenever you're writing a poem or a song to really find these motifs and really drive them home, because people understand the connotations behind words intrinsically. They don't really have to think about it, and they will evoke meanings subconsciously within the reader. So when you're hearing rootin' and when you're hearing leaf and leafing, it really just conjures up that image of spring and growth and rejuvenation and all that jazz. So Mom, Dad, I'm gonna make it to the shore. That's our pre-chorus, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're gonna keep for the whole entire song. And the only thing that is required is that we end off the verse with something that rhymes with chore. And then everything will make sense. So now let's go on to the chorus. The chorus is going to be easy because I've already really brainstormed it. And we've actually already brainstormed a lot of it in the previous 2 episodes. I'm going to start by saying, look at me now. Well, I'm looking around. Oh, wow, I really just not know. It's now. So look at me now. Well, I'm looking around. So now obviously rhymes with around, keeping that internal rhyme going. And I'm really having this conversation with myself almost. It's almost like internalized dialogue where I'm kind of taking the voice of my father and my mother and internalizing that onto myself as that guidance. It's almost like a coping mechanism. And at the same time, you have a little bit of sarcastic air to it. Well, look at me now, Well, I'm looking around and I'm not seeing much is pretty much what I'm saying. And that's really just that reflective kind of happy-go-lucky in some sense, but in another sense kind of rueful reaction to moving out. So, well, I'm looking around at all that's been lost and all that's been found. I'm gonna have to just squeeze it in here. So obviously found rhymes with around, and notice I don't have an internal rhyme here, and that's because I really want to set this line apart from the rest. This is kind of my thesis, that all that's been lost and all that's been found. There's something that I really want to drive home about that it's not just one of these throwaway gimmicky lines that have this carnival, this circus, this sing-songy aspect to it. It really is something sincere. And so you also have this parallelism with all that's been lost and all that's been found. It's also a paradox. But we've already come up with this idea before. I mean, if you've listened to the previous 2 episodes, I pretty much just stole this exactly from our brainstorming process there. And all that's been lost and all that's been found. On this road, actually, let's go ahead and make this a separate line. Oh, I stole the G there. Let me just delete that and we'll get that back in there. So, and all that's been found. There we go. So actually this line doesn't rhyme at all, which once again really drives home that it's something to pay attention to. But it will end off with this capstone with found that ties it all together. And so, once again, the way that I found the syllables for this is simply derived from the chords and the guitar piece. This is the number of syllables that fits with the amount of time that I gave myself in the rhythm, in the beats that I permitted when just fiddling around on the guitar. So look at me now. Well, I'm looking around at all that's been lost and all that's been found. And I think we have to say where all this stuff has been lost and found. So on this road, who can say? You know, that really keeps on driving home with this sarcastic air. You know, who really can say all that's been lost and all that's been found on this road? And so, who can say? And I want this to rhyme. So, I'm thinking something like if they're going the right way or something like that. So, if they are, well, in order to fit with the syllables here, it needs to be if they're going the way. And I think it's implied there that the way is the correct path, you know. If they're going the way, these orbs, I'm envisioning a person on a boat or a caravel or something like that, and they have their astrolabe in hand, and they're looking up at the stars, the orbs, and they're gleaming, and they're looking at them for a sense of guidance. But obviously that's pretty primitive technology. And also, I think the idea of chasing the stars is another very common archetype for a person my age, where they're really young, they're really fresh and naive and excited and ambitious, that they want to attain those stars. They want to be like their own stars. And yeah, they're striving, they're reaching for the moon. And so these orbs, gleaming bright, may lead you astray. And so, astray obviously ties in with way and say, but I'm really driving home this idea that your stars and your expectations and your ambitions may actually make you lose a lot in the process, in the wake of your dreams. And so that's something that I really want to underscore as well in this song. It's going to be kind of a tangential theme or tangential message, but it's something I definitely wanted to include, because in the beginning I seemed pretty cavalier about moving on. I mean, I talk about I'm just swimming forwards towards the door. I just want to get out of the house. My parents are being obnoxious and way too sentimental about this whole thing. But I eventually realized that what I was worshiping at the time may have actually made me lose a lot in the process. All the joys and the beauty that I may have, never really recognized in its truest form before. But anyways, that's enough introspection for right now. That's the chorus, ladies and gentlemen. And I can't wait to actually give you guys a good listen to this, how it all fits together. Obviously, a lot of this I've already brainstormed before. Like I said, ROSIS would take days for me to record, and a lot of it would just be a lot of radio silence as I try and brainstorm. But I think this gives you a pretty good idea of what the process is kind of like. I think I'm talking you through all of the ideas. But we still have another 2 verses and a bridge to cover. So I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go on to verse 3 now. So verse 3, I'm going to make it super quick because I think this is already droning on quite a long time. And so I want to fast forward to me actually on the road and me actually on the open seas and kind of being submerged in the deep recesses of the ocean, the deep trenches. And so I'm going to say I'm cramped because I'm kind of a taller dude, so I can't imagine riding in a car being that comfortable for that long. So I'm cramped. Once again, the 2-syllable thing. This is kind of, although cramped, I'm just going to take out the E there to really emphasize that this is 2 syllables. So I'm cramped, cruising about all these off-ramps. Once again, the internal rhyme there, cramped, ramps, and obviously off-ramps it has 2 meanings. They're kind of these obstacles or these dead ends that are leading me astray from the true path. These kind of detours or these distractions. But they're also just tying in with the typical terminology for road trips and whatnot. And so also you have cruising, which has the double connotation of just riding your car, but at the same time cruise ships and all of that ties in with the maritime aspect. And so you have all that. And then something that I really wanted to include somewhere in this poem, or the song rather, is something that I noticed driving by myself. I was coming back home from soccer one night and I noted the street lamps and how peculiar they really looked at midnight. You know, there were almost no cars on the highway. It was just me and the lamps. And as a little experiment for myself, I began trying to come up with similes or comparisons of these towering orbs that were, hung from this lamp. And they were just contrasted with the pitch black night sky. And I really thought they looked like the kind of angler fish lamps. If you've seen Finding Nemo or something like that, that's kind of what I imagined. And so I wanted to include that somewhere where it's these unknown, predators who are lurking somewhere in the sea, and they're kind of distracting me with these shining orbs, with these shining ambitions, and these orbs gleaming bright, as I put it in the chorus. And I don't really know which are actually a way of guidance and which are really just a distraction leading to a dead end or something like that. And so I want to write something like flanked here about. I want to say I'm like surrounded, get that like claustrophobic sense. Flanked here about by dim fish lamps. Now, I'm not really a big fan of dim here, because I think when I'm just saying it, flanked here about by dim fish lamps, that's kind of hard to say. And I think when I'm actually singing it, I think I may just resort to flanked here about by these fish lamps, because I think that's more natural. But I'm going to keep dim for now. Lamps obviously rhymes with ramps, so we got that. But really here, what I'm really driving home is, once again, that underwater submerged motif. So yeah, Flank to Your About by Dim Fish Lamps. And then I still am in my car. I'm looking for maybe a motel or something, so I'm just gonna write searching around where I decamp. And so searching for that new home. I no longer have that house to go back to, so this ties in obviously with the home aspect, which is kind of the big point of this whole entire song. That's the literal, or that's rather the metaphorical meaning, is all about homesickness, about being untethered. So searching around where I decamp. So I need one last line for this verse, and I think I want to include kind of an admission here that I'm not really making that much progress by myself. That I feel like I'm just ending up in the same place, that same road with no destination. So I want to say, oh, I'm just treading, because treading obviously ties in with the water motif, and when you tread water, you're not really going anywhere, you're kind of just trying to keep your head above the surface. So I'm just treading headings. Get that internal rhyme there, treading and headings. Nothing more. And so the more is gonna time with the pre-chorus with chore, which is one of the rules that we set for ourselves. And that's really a lot of writing poetry in a vacuum like this, where you don't have a set form or any grafting posts. Really what you have to do is make those grafting posts for yourself and set these rules that you have to follow, because that will give you some sense of where to go. Without it, you're just writing lines without any purpose, without any continuity, without any patterns that the reader can pick up on. And so I would really recommend setting these rules for yourself. So that's our third verse. All done, and it was that easy. And so now we go on to our bridge, and our bridge is where the money's made in this song, because this is where it's kind of like our cry out, it's our breaking point, it's our apotheosis, where we realize that home doesn't have to be a singular place, but it could be multiple places, and that's all right. And honestly, the best travelers are the ones who are able to recognize this. And so for the bridge, I want to say something like, even when you're home in mind, and this mind is really going to be drawn out. It's going to go across that little transition area where I keep the same note, but I change one part of the note and I walk it down the string, and you get this kind of cascading, the sense of something cascading down and percolating to some destination, finally making it somewhere, going past that repetition to a new home. So even when you're home in mind, I want to say, like, all that you know, you let go far behind, something like that. And all that you know. Now, I don't know if I came up with this lyric sincerely, because it sounds a little bit familiar, but when I was first brainstorming this, these lyrics really just came to me, and really they came to me when I first stumbled across that connection of chords, that chord progression. It just sung to me, and I was like, that's what this really feels like. And all that you know is you left far behind, rather. You let go far behind. There it is. Even when you're home in mind, I'm gonna get rid of this "and" actually, because I don't think it adds anything, and I think it actually just messes up our syllables. So all that you know, you let go far behind. I might change let go to left, actually, because I think that just flows better. And it conveys the same message with less syllables. And I think that usually is a good sign, because brevity is the soul of wit, after all. All that you know, you left far behind. I'm going to go ahead and replace let go real quick. You left far behind. And this is kind of the inflection point. This is where it's the change. So maybe, so this is my admission. So maybe it's just time. Time is kind of a rhyme with behind, which really adds that flow, that connection between the two lines. So maybe it's just time to find that internal rhyme there, time and find. Maybe it's just time to find a new way home. Home doesn't rhyme with the other lines, but that's the point, because it's a new way home, 1, and 2, I really want to emphasize this line as something you want to pay attention to. Kind of how I did it the same way before, where it really didn't rhyme all that much. I really want to do the same thing here, where that last line is something that pierces through all of the campiness of previous lines, and it's sincere. It's just time to find a new way home. That's our bridge, and then that would go into our final verse, and this is the last part. I hope you're sticking with me here, because it's all going to pay off at the end when you actually listen to the song. Man, is that going to be rewarding when you can, all of your work behind the scenes and in front of the camera, in front of the work, when you're going to finally actually listen to your voice actually realized, and all of that thought, all of the creativity channeled into a singular form. Man, is that going to be powerful. And so finally, verse 4, I want to talk about me now with my group of friends, and this resolution that I've come across, that it's okay to have a second home, that other families exist out there, and that although it may not be a connection from blood, that they kind of serve a similar purpose. Obviously, nothing can replace that first home, but it's a damn good supplement, if nothing else. It's something that we really can't do without. So we stand. There we go. So we have that change in point of view from mom, from dad, from me to we. And so all of us stand together. That's kind of that new connection. So we stand singing. This is kind of a meta awareness, because I'm going to be singing when, actually saying these lyrics. So meta awareness. So we stand singing about on the weekends. And once again, this sort of rhymes with stand. Stand, weekends. It doesn't really rhyme, but once again, it's a song and people aren't really going to pick up on that. The pattern that we set before is going to trick their mind into hearing it when it's not actually there. So we stand singing about on the weekends, hooting and shouting. So hooting and shouting. I really want to get this sense of levity into the song now, where it really contrasts the solemnity of the third verse and the bridge especially. So hooting and shouting with our friends. So it's not my friends, it's our friends. Once again, that change of point of view where it becomes a community, a group now, instead of just individuals with our friends. But still, my road, it's no dead ends. And so although before I said I was just taking all of these off ramps and not really getting anywhere, my road never really hit a dead end. And that's a big shift in the song, because I realized that wherever I end up, that there never really is a destination. And if ever there was, it's just led to a new journey, you know? And although that's really cliche, and I'm really, holding myself back from saying, oh, the journey is the destination, it is a good theme and a good message to propagate throughout a song and throughout any listeners or viewership or anything like that. But still, my road hits no dead ends. And finally, as I bellow. Now, bellow ties in with the sailing motif, because when the sails bellow, it's when they kind of become full with the wind, when you are at your maximum speed. And so as I bellow, my sweet I don't think my sweet fellow would, I don't think we have enough syllables for that, so I'm just gonna say, as I bellow fellow back ashore. Now shore obviously ties in with that chore earlier, which is needed for that continuity. But obviously I've since gone past the shore, that's where I used to think home was on the shore. But really now what I'm finding is that as I bellow fellow back ashore, as I bellow my sails, that's my new home, really, that journey. And I realize that the journey or the destination is always in flux, and it's always in some sort of continuity with some place earlier up the stream, but the stream is always flowing towards a new port, a new destination. So I finally admit that I'm always on the seas, and I bellow back ashore to whoever's there, whoever's stuck there. And that ties everything together. I would then go into the pre-chorus and the chorus, and it would kind of just fade out into the end of the song. And so that's everything. I know this was a lot, and feel free to contact me if you have any questions. As always, it's www.whyitmeters.com. That's our website, or feel free to look us up on any of our social media, including our Instagram and Facebook, and even feel free to check out, if you're on the podcast, I encourage you to check out our YouTube video series where you can actually see me and all of my brain or my mind maps, and actually follow through my process of writing the lyrics. And yeah, if you have any questions, make sure to reach out to me. Keep your eye out for that extra addition to this series, that final product where I'm actually going to publish the song, and you guys can listen to it on repeat and get some inspiration for a poem or a song or simply a verse of your own. My name's Lucas, and thank you for listening. I look forward to helping you along your poetic or your songwriting journey. I'll be your captain and make sure that you'll make it ashore, or rather, I'll help you weather the storm along this journey and this road and this voyage far away from home. As always, let's get writing.